This episode of La Verdad podcast is brought to you by Sonia Figueroa of csonia.com.
Are you looking to buy a house or perhaps thinking about selling your home? Look no further and let our chica, Sonia Figueroa, help you out.
With now over 12 years of experience in real estate, Sonia has helped over 200 sellers and buyers combined in the last couple of years. So if you're a first-time home buyer or perhaps a first-time seller, Sonia is your go-to chica.
Definitely. And I'm sure some of you maybe have already started your own research online, reading things that probably actually don't make any sense to you because it's your first time buying. Or maybe you have spoken to other people but haven't found someone that actually knows what they're doing.
Well, you know what? If this sounds like you, reach out to Sonia Figueroa at www.csonia.com. That is www.seesonia.com or any social media outlet. And mi gente, don't forget, she also speaks Spanish. Habla español. You're now listening to La Verdad podcast. We're back at it again with another episode of La Verdad podcast. And it's a little early, so I got my Butelo on right now and just drinking a little coffee and sweating a little bit because it's starting to get warm outside, even though this morning was a little cooler. But I have here V-Faye. How are you?
I'm good. I got my coffee too, but I'm not trying to. It's definitely not Bustelo. Sorry, guys. So I won't advertise that. But I'm good.
That's great. So this morning, we actually, I want to say it's one of the earliest podcasts that we recorded other than, I think 11 o'clock was the record.
Yeah.
Now it's 10 in the morning.
Thank you for making accommodations.
It's great, because it gets you, we have a couple shows. We're doing 2 shows today, so we want to get it done. And then we have we have a meeting after that. So it's a long day. And then we also want to enjoy time with our family, right? So I always look at Sundays being familia time. And then getting the recording done in the morning actually gives me enough time to do some family stuff at night or laundry, right? So,
it's true,
so today actually we are joined by one of Chicago's. I want to say I've checked her out on Facebook prior to even doing the podcast. I was already kind of following. I met you once in the Puerto Rican parade when we were marching for Oscar Lopez. I remember. And even throughout some of my friends from Northeastern, they kind of mention your name here and there. And the name's been around for a while that I can remember. But today we have here with us Melissa DuPrey, who is from Chicago itself. And, in her profile, it has a bunch of different things that she does. So I'm going to let her explain that a little bit more. But she's an actor, playwright, comedian, dancer, musician, activist, y muchas cosas, right?
Tanta cosa. Because Chicago is hard to live. It's hard to live. It's definitely a grind city, and I think that it gives you so many opportunities to really expand and dive deep into your artistry and dive deep into whatever you're passionate about. And for me, I didn't know what I was passionate about until I was faced with adversity, faced with difficulties and faced with barriers. So then you just got to do it, and then there you go, you have another hat. So I am degreed in theater, so first and foremost I'm an actor. And then by not being able to book as much as I wanted to, I've got 8 years of Shakespearean training under my belt, but I ain't gonna play Hamlet anytime soon. I'm not Queen McBee or anything like that. So I noticed that there was a lack, a huge lack of representation, and there was definitely a lack of booking and job opportunities. So I started creating my own solo shows, and out of that came stand-up comedy. Like I really wasn't funny. I was just telling dick jokes, but it was really funny actually. I did maybe my first 15 minutes of just storytelling, and storytelling is huge here in Chicago, and I did not know that. And I just was like, well, I do theater, but I also I'm funny on the side. Acting was my focus, and then comedy just accidentally happened. And then I had to produce my own work, so I learned how to produce, self-produce, self-promote. I had to do that. You have to learn how to make your art your business, because artistic currency is really what drives you here in Chicago. You have to be able to do all those things. And then after that, before that, I joined Bomba. I got into this group, Bompleneras, which was started by Ivelis Diaz, who was the lead vocalist in Buya, Bomba con Buya.
Which, by the way, mi gente, if you haven't checked out the show, she's actually in one of our shows with the one we had with Bomba con Buya.
She's going and doing a lot of solo work now,
I saw
and
that.
she's a tremendous artist. And then the other co-creator of that was the daughter of the leader of Africaribe, Jessica Rodriguez. So those two got together, created an all-female bomba group, which was the only group in the whole Midwest. There's a female bomba group in California, and there's one in New York, but nothing to represent the Midwest. And we're ferocious women in percussion. Learned how to do music, so I do a lot of things all together.
And the funny part that you mentioned earlier when we were explaining why you have so many roles, it's that we've kind of fallen into that same thing here in Chicago, where it's like either it's so expensive to get someone to do graphic design. Let's just put that right. And so it's like,
time is money.
Let me learn how to do it so I could get it done real quick. Or for example, maybe I need somebody to do audio, but let me just learn it myself and do it myself. So it's one of those things that you start becoming a jack of all trades, right? Sometimes it gets a little hard, so I kind of wanted to ask you, like, how do you manage all of that? Because then it could become to the point where you get overwhelmed in your especially in your career. So how do you manage your career in that sense?
Man, it wasn't until I had like a nervous breakdown. It's like, there's too much.
Yeah,
so
that's
much.
usually how it happens.
You're grinding. A lot of times when you're producing and you're working and you're editing, it takes away from the artistic ability to actually create.
Okay.
So you have to really manage your time in a way where you are dedicating maybe a couple hours here of time creation, and then promotion, and then editing, and then press release and marketing. You have to really micromanage your time, because you have to create the balance. If not, you're just spinning plates at all times, burning the candles at both ends, because before you know it, you have to actually go do a gig. So I was acting, I was doing comedy, I'm working full time, time to do it. And so I'm 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like writing a press release or doing these graphics. So like at work itself was a bartering system. It was like, how does community show up and like share resources? Because some of these things do cost money, and you never ever ever want to ask an artist or a professional to do something for you for free.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But I've got something you don't. Like, you maybe want to do a fundraiser. I'm a hella good host and MC. So, like, how do we barter? Like, can you do this graphic for me, and I got you on something else? Whenever you need me, call me. And I think that's relationship building, not networking. You're actually building with somebody. So after a while of, like, I can't do all this by myself, you pull people in. And that also, you promote them, you praise them. This graphic design was, like, done by this. It's my boy. It's my go-to. And then, you know what? I go to him. When I rise, we rise together.
Exactly. And that's a good thing too, because I was prior to going to college and all that, I was dabbling around a lot in the music area, right? So
what you do?
So
She's like, hold on, let me see.
What you do? You sing about bachata?
A lot for many years I was a trumpet player, so I played in a couple different styles of bands.
Yes, brass. Come through brass section.
The trumpet in the last like 5 years, but when I was in the music scene, it was a lot like that. But then, unfortunately, people tend to burn each
for so long. It only lasts, and then you tap out, and then again you talk about your levels. You get burnt out, and then you can get to a point. Hopefully, by then there's levels. I could write a book about the hustle and grind. After you've exhausted the barter system and the network, because it does cost, you've gotten to a point, then you stop doing stuff for free, and you tell people what you're worth. You tell people, I can totally do it, and you do it. It is hard.
For me, I think it's hard, because we're still not at that level yet, I want to say, but I've talked to a lot of people that say, you have to give them what your value is.
Know your worth,
But it's like, damn, like, what is my worth? What is my value?
It's different for everybody, right? It's different from anybody. I don't think people could necessarily come out the gate being like, you have to charge, it's kind of like an unspoken pay your dues, but I really think that first and foremost, you are not the first person to do this. I'll tell you that for sure. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, but you want to creatively imagine how you can do it and rise together. because we're all hustling. You're like, this is not
Right.
the only
Yeah.
thing to do.
Right.
But, at a certain point when you've excelled and you are now creating a beautiful quality product, you can have a certain amount of autonomy over your work. And I think that that's how you get to the next level. And then once you exhausted that, you get the hell out of Chicago.
Started exploring outside.
Right.
So I want to take it back though, and I want to kind of, pick your brain and see where that love for theater, entertainment, where did it come from?
Well, I've always had a love for performance.
Okay.
At 5 years old, I did my first play at La Casa Puertorriqueña.
I had my birthday there.
Yeah.
I think everybody's used
Right, at 5. My tia Amanda Caballero, she was a community organizer at the time, and she created this play, and it just involved our family. And my family is not particularly artistic on my mother's side, but they are involved, and so they created this play. They put me up on stage, and I was just like, I was a natural, not a jamona, but I was just like, I can do this and not really be freaked out
Yeah.
at 5 years old. And so they started trying to put me in commercials and things like
Nice.
that. But at the time when I was younger, my dad kind of split and separated from my mom, so. I was maybe about 6 years old, and I went to a Raisinets commercial, and the producer was like, okay, the line is, my daddy gives me Raisinets whenever we go to the movies. And then I just broke down, and they were like, my daddy don't take me nowhere. He stopped seeing me. And so I took a hiatus from my child acting career. But I always had a calling to it in high school and college, even in junior high. But I was also a competitive salsa dancer.
Okay.
I needed to rep my culture so hard. I was born and raised here, but I left and moved to Texas in the 90s because gang violence was so turbulent.
Big around here.
In the 90s, there were gang initiations. It was like the height of crack wars on the streets, and Mayor Daley was so there was a lot of really high violent times in Chicago, and my mom removed me from that because my family was also involved in a lot of things that just put me in a position of danger. So being in Texas, I'm a Black Latina, I am Afro Latina, and that does not exist in outside of Chicago, really, or New York.
Or New York.
So in the South, it's really Neapolitan. You're either Black, white, or Mexican. But even in Houston, where I spent a lot of time, it was very diverse. But I had to literally no, I'm not Black, and I am Puerto Rican. So I had to just get people to understand Puerto Ricanism. And so I would go to school with decked out flag from head to toe. I'd be like,
That's
flag
awesome,
bandana, flag beret, flag book bag, t-shirt, gym socks,
earrings.
everything, earrings,
funny-
eyeshadow.
It's funny that you mentioned that, and I tried to put two and two together throughout the different podcasts and the way people have gotten to where they're at now.
Yeah.
So, for example, for us, or for myself, it wasn't until I went to college that I had to show my Puerto Ricanism, right?
Yeah.
Because it's no one really knew so much.
Yeah.
I went to a school that was mostly white.
Yeah.
And when I would explain Puerto Rico, they're like, "Oh, what is that?" So then that's where my love for Puerto Rico came. So I feel like it always happens in some way where you have to leave your current environment, where a lot of people express that they're Puerto Rican, and then you eventually start getting that little extra pride, and you start doing a little research of what it is to be, what it means to be Puerto Rican.
Oh,
right?
absolutely, and that is not specific to a person. That is specific to to the culture because of colonization. Because
Right.
we as Puerto Rican people who have not been able to own our own land have to take the Puerto Rican identity with us wherever we go.
Exactly.
Right? Ni de aquí ni de allá. We are in the middle, so Puerto Rico has to come with us at all times. So
Yeah.
you don't do that right now. You don't have to rep hard for Puerto Rico in Chicago, but once you find yourself isolated, that's when Puerto Ricans just have to show up,
Show
show
up.
out, grip the flags with both hands,
Yep.
and be like, yo no voy a ningún sitio, yo soy puertorriqueño, que orgullo tengo,
Yep,
and
yep.
that's what you had to do.
That
And
was the first thing I hung up in my office at
Yeah.
work when I got the job. I was like,
step.
step one.
I just feel
Here we
like
go.
Everybody know.
This is the boundary. Do not cross me. Do not cross me.
Research.
Puerto Rican just steps in.
The only time I'm gonna
flag
step
up.
out of this is when I answer the phone. Hello, Adler's office. How are you? Code
Mr.
switch.
Figueroa on the line.
You can code switch all day, mama, but we are not going to remove ourselves from our identity. And I think
Oh,
I
man.
think that's a specific thing to Puerto Rican people in general. But where I think the line gets muddied is why do you fly that flag? Do you know what it means?
Exactly.
Do you have the right colors?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, Because I think that there are levels to it, right? Like we just have the identity for identity's sake, but like when you go beyond that, there are a lot of Puerto Ricans that are still attached to a colonialized way of living, and they don't even realize it. You know, it's a very capitalist mentality and it's conditioning, and so like I can go on and on about this political, but like I could see where you are. You know, I could see. I was coming up the stairs and I see the resistance flag here, so I know where your politics are, but you know, it's so few and far between, and we are just now seeing a rise in that kind of mentality where it's just not enough to be like, I'm Puerto Rican, but are you for Puerto Rico and are you for Puerto Ricans?
Exactly. And just understanding the history behind it. Like you said, it's not just flying the flag, but understanding what's the right color to fly and what the actual flag that you should be flying.
Yeah, because we were even like, he was talking about it at the Puerto Rican Day Parade, just walking around with that. He was like, oh, you know, these people probably wear the flag as capes, but they don't know what it means. And he's just getting so frustrated. But it's probably true. I mean, I definitely didn't know until I went to college. You know, like my parents didn't really push the culture, I guess, as much because of kind of a little bit of what you went through, like just where they grew up, where they were at. They're like, oh no, we need to take her out.
Yes.
Things like that. So I didn't
definitely
know
generational gaps there because they were trying to identify for a completely different reason. You don't want to wear your culture, your identity on your flag when you're going into a bank for a loan, you know. And at the time it was just really about, how do I own my house, how do I buy some property, and you know, again, the capitalist mentality is assimilation,
right?
You know, the colonized mind is assimilation. And so like they were completely different, and are they going to instill that in their kids at the time? Probably not. My parents didn't speak Spanish to me at all.
Same.
I went to Puerto Rico every year with my abuela, and my abuela, by hook or by crook, was like, no, tú te vas a aprender. Like,
that's good though, you know. Yeah, so I definitely know
you were in Texas, and then eventually you came back to Chicago. And during what time? Was it for high school or past?
No, I went to college because it was cheap.
Okay.
So I went to the University of Houston, but that was after I went to community college for 2 years because it was cheap. I was like, a lot of people don't know that you don't have to just jump right in to a university level, because again, when we think about how much in debt we are as a country, that is such a pill. That is such a pill that people force down your throat, that you have to go in. And I had straight A's. I was a badass student, but I had so much, like, I was not paying attention to scholarships, so I failed in getting myself financially ready for that. I got into Rice University, which is a really good school in the South, but I didn't have money to pay for it, so I went to community college. I got my degrees in University of Houston, and as soon as I got them, I came back home because I was like, I'm missing community. I'm a woman of color with Shakespeare. I'm not gonna get hired over here. I came up here, and then I joined a Latina theater company, Teatro Luna, and I met a lot of wonderful people. Learned how to create plays and theater around social justice issues by doing interviews. So all of our work used to be autobiographic and ethnographic, so specifically through the lens of Latinx identity and what they were facing. And then we took those stories, described them, and just did it exactly on stage through different devices of theater, or we did an artistic interpretation of what we heard, what we saw, and we used all of our theater knowledge, because we're all like degree theater people, but as women of color, they're not going to make room for us at the table to give us lead jobs, so we create plays that matter.
And that's great that you were able to find a group like that. I know when we were looking up, like, you know, your bio, it mentioned that. It was one of the first things that I mentioned. I was like, oh, I have to ask her. So what specifically does that group do? Has it been around for a very long time? Or?
Teatro Luna, and it was created by Koya Paz, Dr. Koya Paz, who is one of the heads of the theater department at DePaul currently.
I knew that name sounded familiar. I was like, hold on.
And then another name that you probably have heard of, Tanya Saracho, who wrote Devious Maids. She showrun the show Devious Maids.
Okay.
And she wrote for several other shows and is currently the lead showrunner in ABC with Shonda Rhimes, and doing a lot of amazing stuff for Latino series. So she's off in LA being an extremely talented TV sitcom writer, and also she's a playwright. So she's opened off Broadway in New York. So these two amazing women found themselves in the same casting room with the same people, with the same women, and it happens to me now. Like, and I will be in the room with the same 15 Latina actresses in Chicago, and we will just be like, hey, you going in for Emily? You going in for Maria part 2? You going for Maria part 1? That's tired of doing that, and all tired of like the Maria role. So the first play that they created together was the Maria Chronicles, and talking about within the diaspora there's so much representation, but yet we keep getting put in the same box in the same mold. And I think that's what Gina Rodriguez, coming out of Chicago, going into Jane the Virgin, continuously tries to say. It was like, I was not willing to accept even a role on Devious Maids, because like that kind of formula follows. And Tanya Sriracha, you have to get in where you get in. So like her whole theatrical career was built on not having a Maria role, but yet the only way she was going to get her foot in the door was writing something like Devious Maids, about servants and about, you know, the sexualized Latina body and exploiting that culture, exploiting that body. But like that is the sacrifice, you know, that is the hypocrisy of the industry, is doing that kind of work. So these women got together and be like, we are beyond the stories of our mothers, the stories of like this one struggle. And we created a lot of different identities, and we created monologues. We went off and did interviews, and then we progressively got more political. Teatro Luna still exists. It used to be housed in Chicago, but now it's doing this like thing where it exists in multiple cities.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
yeah, so they exist on
Expanding.
Facebook, and they try to tap in. I was like, tell me your story that's happening here in Arizona.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's like for Latinas in Florida right now, being either Latina identity and progressive. Are you a Republican? You know, are you Latina and a Trump supporter? What is that? What does that look like? So that's how they exist now. But I'm the general manager of a social justice theater company currently. It's called Free Street Theater. They're 50 years old. So going beyond the realm of just like the Latinx experience, now I'm looking on more of a larger Chicago identity politic, where what is it like for disenfranchised people of color and youth particularly to tell those stories. So it's the same model, but now we open it up to include LGBTQ youth and adults, trans, femme, people of color, multi-generational. We work with people from 9 years old to 99 years old. We work with artists and non-traditional artists. But Free Street's been around for 50 years, and I now work directly with Koya Paz, who's the artistic director of it. So it's kind of like full circle.
Wow.
Full circle.
Now, I want to ask you, and I've asked this to a couple of different, musicians that come by and artists that come by. Do you feel that you need to leave Chicago in order to make it, in the career, or to be internationally known or nationally known? Do you feel that way about Chicago?
I have a very complex relationship with Chicago. I have always been a huge proponent of you don't have to leave. Because I feel like currently as an actor, and this is just as my actor hat, there are a lot of opportunities here right now. There are 9 TV shows filming right now, including Empire, Shameless. These are all network shows, not including the Chicago empire of Chicago Med, Chicago Law, Chicago PD, which I was on, Chicago Fire. Now there is The Shy coming out, APB. There are so many shows coming out right now. So there are a bulk of opportunities to be on at network level. And I think that's fine. For me, though, outside of my artistic careers, like I could do that. But if you get on one show, and a lot of people don't know this, if you get on one show as a particular role, like Chicago PD, I was Detective Luisa Flores. I had my spotlight with John Seda. I melted. I loved it. I had my spotlight. I will never be able to go on that show again because I was a detective. So, like, that's it.
Okay.
So I can only now go to the other shows and see what I can get reoccurring. Once that taps out, those opportunities are then exhausted. So while there are beautiful, wonderful opportunities, and maybe I can get a showrunner there, maybe, si Dios quiere, ojalá que sí, maybe that will keep me here. But in all honesty, I've already been to New York. I've already been at the heads of like these network casting agencies. Right. And for me to want to excel, you have to leave. You shouldn't stay in a city for more than 10 years at any case. You go where the work is.
Right.
So I don't necessarily believe you have to leave Chicago to be great. I think this is a grind city. I believe you learn how to be great here so your work stands out and there's a job waiting for you elsewhere. You don't stay. You don't, Mikey O from Mikey O Productions told me, you don't come this far just to come this far. You know, there's always a step beyond. And if you really wanted to get out and make change in the world, you can't stay comfortable.
Right.
That's great. Yeah, and I could feel that fire too, that love that you have for what you do.
I love Chicago. I have a very complex relationship with Chicago. Chicago is can I swear?
Yeah.
You can do whatever
Chicago
you
is
want.
a fucked up, oppressive ass city. It is You can't leave your door without spending at least $40, or at the most extreme, getting shot and locked up on accident. Yeah. You know, it is a very, very racially and economically segregated city. Do I want to stay here and do the work? I am a ferocious ass soldier, and I will fight. My activism drives me to be here, and my artistry also allows me to be here. But my artistry forever. You know, if you still see me 2 years from now in Chicago, be like, Melissa, get the fuck out of here. What are you doing here? You don't need to be here. I will not grow in that way, but I could do my activism work if I have a larger platform. And my job, first and foremost, as an artist, is to grow. And the more I grow, the more power that will lend to me to do the things I'm passionate about.
Right,
I will be able to come to Chicago with more money and open up an organization that I feel passionate about.
Exactly. So for people that are into acting, what would you say is like the area right now that is popping to be
content creation. There's nothing more exciting than to be able to get a group of people together and be like, let's just make our own show. Did you know, like 2 years ago, the film that won the award in the Tribeca Film Festival, I think it was Tribeca, I could be wrong. It's called Tangerine. And this movie, Tangerine, was about two trans women. One had just gotten out of jail looking for a boyfriend. It was a great story. It was completely filmed on an iPhone. Completely filmed on an iPhone, and it was beautiful. It didn't matter the quality. It had a great story. They got together and said, this is a story, and we're not going to sensationalize, we're not going to tokenize trans women. We're going to tell the story of their everyday life. And we're also going to complicate it. We're going to complicate it by throwing in other experiences. So I truly believe right now is the time to do it. I was a part of a web series called Brown Girls, and that was written and created by two queer brown women, Fatima and Jamila Woods, their story about their friendship. And they decided just to write a quick pilot, and they brought me in, and they brought a couple people, and basically our friends. They were just like, this is a good actor, this is a good actor, this person never acted before. The lead of that show is a dancer. She's never acted before ever. And they gave her that role, and it got picked up for HBO. HBO bought it, and they're going to develop the series. Like, there is nothing more exciting than to do something on your own that hasn't been seen before, or at least just has, you have the fire and the confidence to say, this story is important, and I'm going to tell it. And I'm going to tell it the way I know how. I'm going to tell it the way that's funny to me and my crew. My tribe likes this. This is what we're doing. So I say, just do it.
Too, though, right? I mean, you have your two own shows that,
I had to, because there was a lack. There was a lack, and also I thought my voice was important. I didn't do it for me. I did it because my theater company needed a story, and it was the way that other people responded to it. I was like, I know women need to talk about how much they love masturbating, and goddamn it, it's healthy, And the first thing I came out with was like, I love to masturbate, and that was my whole platform. Was it a fire? Yes. Was a Latina talking about it? No. Was a woman talking about it? No. So I was bringing in not only women, Latina, I was bringing women of all genres, and then men, because I had a 15-minute slideshow telling men about things that make my pussy frown. And so, like, it was educational for them. So, like, you never know what people want to hear. So I would say just try it and do it. Try everything and do it.
Now, are you still doing that? Is that Sexomedy?
Sexomedy was the first one. Okay. The second one was Sushi Frito. It was talking about, intersectionality, about like what it's like to be a Latina, just like taking over white spaces and reclaiming it, because they Columbus a lot of shit. Let's just be honest. Like, white people Columbus all the things. They just
made it into a verb.
White people Columbus so much, and then we think things are like white culture. And I was like, actually, they took yoga from somewhere else. So, like, I should be able to walk in and, like, do yoga and brunch and put adobo on my quinoa because I can. You know, like, it's not white of me. It's just healthy. You know, like, I'm going to make this turmeric ginger juice, goddammit, because I care about myself. So that's what Sushi Frito's about. It's about being a neo-Latina, a progressive Latina. How do we move through the world as we are right now, holding on to tradition and actually pushing back toxic patriarchy and toxic masculinity and certain things about our culture that are holding us back. So Sexomedy is gonna have a reprise. The next thing I'm maybe working on is Sexomedy Part 2, the second coming. Yeah, I think I'm going to workshop that.
Yeah, let us know.
It's an awesome one. And if it does come out, just let us know because I'm sure I want to check it out.
Yeah,
and
same.
We were talking about it earlier. And so when you were doing these two shows, what was the reaction of the crowd? Did they love it? Was it more like, mira esta
Were you nervous?
Cafre sucia. I'll tell you what. It wasn't until my grandmother came to see one of my shows that she realized why people loved it so much.
How nervous were you? When your
Yes, what I was
came to
saying,
the
like
show?
knowing what you're gonna talk about, like
yeah, because I have a piece. I talk a lot about my abuela because she is the antithesis of everything that I feel is growth. Like, you know, she still has like racial politics. She's racism in her politics. She still has like, you know, she's policing my ovaries hard as fuck. Cause like, when you gonna have my grandson, my grandma? Like, tú eres lesbiana. Yo nunca he visto con un hombre. I'm like, whoa, calm down. You know, I bring her in a lot of my work, so I think I was nervous because she is in a lot of, you know, just to see the juxtaposition of that generational gap. So you present that to see how far you are away from that thing that you are embedded. So, I was nervous, but, you know, she laughed. And then it wasn't until then that she saw that I sold out a 350-seat theater. And she was like, wow. Wow, okay. Now she's behind it. Before she was like, you need to get a job. You need to get a job. Esto no se sostiene. No, you know, you need a job. But even my dad was never behind it because of the content, like the sexualized content. He was not behind it. But it wasn't until he saw Packed Joe's on Wheat Street, like a line around the block, did he realize, okay, the audience, the people are there to see what I'm presenting, but I don't think it's about me. I think it's about the things that I'm talking about, as bold as I'm talking about it. And they don't expect it to come from this face. Like, they don't expect me to talk about blowjobs being a blow gift. You know, like, it's not. I think it's a nice shock. It is something that you are not expecting. So they come to see a surprise, honestly, and they're not gonna. I think they know by now, and now there's a certain expectation of what to see coming from a Melissa DuPrey brand. Yeah. But I'm very lucky and honored that people have just been so supportive and rally behind the stuff that I talk about. Because if I can get them in one way, I can get them to like also hear and listen about other things that I challenge. And I've actually lost half of the audience that I've built because they probably disagree with my politics. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, I'll still win you with a dick joke. But I will still try to, like, indoctrinate you somehow.
So you still planted that seed as well, you know, which is, to me, it's a big thing, you know. But I remember when I was looking up the show, and my dad was actually talking about it, too. He was like, oh, that's pretty cool that not only a Latina, Puerto Rican, somebody from Chicago is doing something that's not really heard of, you know. I haven't seen it. I always see male comedians do this kind of show. Now, being in a male-dominated kind of scene, you know, you say you performed at Joe's on Wheat Street. How was that feeling? How did they receive you, especially in the comedy area?
I feel very blessed because I came through the comedy scene through the Latino circuit with Mikey O. My very first stand-up was in a 300-seat house. Like, I took a comedy class on Friday. 2 days later, that instructor was like, you got to get this girl on stage. And I did my first 5 minutes, 2 days first class. So I feel very lucky to have always been supported by the male counterparts in the comedy circle. That being said, it's a very small circle. and Joey Villagomez, people like Abby Sanchez, people like Michael Kendo. Those are the people who mentored me and brought me through. There are also a lot of Latinas, Santos, Gwen La Roca, Patty Vasquez. That's just to name a few. I'll be going off, and also like Wendy and Lori from the Venezuelan.
Yeah.
Worked with them a million times. All of us realized that this is a very close, small circuit, and we supported each other. But speaking specifically to the men, even oh my gosh, what's his name out of Pilsen? he's like my favorite. Not Joe, but he's also political. Goodness, I'm gonna forget the name, and he's gonna kill me later. He's gonna kill me later. But they've been like my big brothers, and it wasn't until I got out of the city. You know, Chicago has been really supportive, but like you can get your head could get big.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, oh, I can't go wrong. It wasn't until a room in New York and Kenny Ortega brought me in where I was just like, oh no, I have to be funny. I can't just be liked, because a lot of times it's like you know, people who come to see you are your friends and family. They're gonna think you're funny all the way.
Yeah.
You know, it's not until you leave that and be, oh, I'm not funny at all.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sharpened. My skins aren't honed. I went to see Ken Gar, who's my comedian mentor in LA. I bombed every. I was like, oh, I'm not ready. I have to come back, and it's not until you know you get your Latino comedy person will be like, yeah, that wasn't as sharp. You know, they've supported me, and I have not faced the kind of misogyny that a lot of other female comics have faced, only because I feel like I come out of the bat strong, and I pretty much verbally castrate anybody that comes near me wrong. Like if you could survive being around me for 5 minutes, then I think that we're cool, and you know I'm not gonna take any of that.
Yeah.
But I have faced recently even a lot of sexual harassment. Like people just don't, because you present sexual content, they think that that's an invitation
it's okay.
to pasar mano or la boca, and I'm just like, no, this is what you don't do. You know, like they want to grab me, or they want to hold me, or talk about my ass. You know, I think that's still like embedded misogyny, and it's hard, but it's not just in the comedy circuit. It is in the entire world. It is in all things.
And I brought it up too because I follow 2 comedians who are from New York, and they do, you know, the same type of shows.
Which comedians?
Their show is called Guys We Fucked. It's a podcast that they have. And it's like my guilty pleasure of listening to it.
He's always
it's
talking
a girl show. It's a girl talk show.
And you get all
they were
the
talking about
you get the skinny. You get the lowdown.
I'm like,
He's like taking notes and shit.
But
Like
they're good. Like I was about to check them out when they came over here, but I ended up having to leave for a business trip.
Yeah.
But I'm like, they talk a lot about that, about how they get sexually harassed a lot, especially they're in New York, and they're doing shows every Friday, and guys say sobre pasan, or they try to make a joke, and it's like, yo, like no, you could talk about that. I'm gonna talk about my stuff, but you know, keep it professional. So that's why I kind of wanted to ask you that if you have faced the same situation being a Latina.
I come out the gate where you can and cannot go with me.
And I love that. That's awesome, because I feel like a lot of times, you know, unfortunately, you know, whether or not we don't tell them ahead of time, or they might not tell them ahead of time.
Yeah.
Es que se empiezan a pasar, okay, I could do this, okay, now I could do that. And
they always want to push a line, and I'm just like, I would love to get to a world where you just respect me first. You know, just fucking respect me, and then we won't even have to have this problem. And then I think again, like there's male dominance everything in this world, and until we start having a little bit more room at the table, then I think that's going to shift and change. But there is nothing more, I think, seductive than a man really just appreciating the power that women have at the table. Like those 2 women know how to create a product, they know how to produce, they're funny, they know what they're doing. You know, they're at no point do they open or offer for a man to help them. Really, you're just giving them material. Today we're gonna talk about you.
The next show.
You know, it's like, do you want me to talk about small dicks? Great, you're in it now. You are in it now.
How do you set up your shows? Are you, for example, your comedy shows? Do you sit down and kind of test out different lines? I don't know if you call them lines or punchlines or whatnot at different shows. Do you put them all together? You're sitting down one day in your room, just putting down like this is what I'm gonna do in the show, or how does your routine go?
Well, I'll be honest. I've taken about 18 months off of stand up because my mom passed away a year ago, and it was really hard. And even before that, I was like, man, my life, talking about burning the candles at both ends, comedy always puts you in a situation where you're going to be at a bar or a place at night, and you're going to be drinking. Sometimes they only pay you in liquor, if they pay you at all. And I just realized that like my lifestyle was getting a little bit unhealthy and I needed to take a break. Before that break, my routine would be, I'm going to go do a lot of gigs, and I would test a little bit material out. But, a mentor of mine, Sarah Contreras, who is a comedian in New York, she's like, write every day. Write every day, even if you don't think it's funny. So on my cell phone, I always have just like little notes. I'm like, this is a good joke. I'm going to flesh out, and then when I sit down to write a set, I look back and be like, man, I was really high when I wrote down this thing. I was really high when I wrote down something about rings around my uterus like an old tree. I don't know how to flesh that out. Like, I might not understand it. It'd be like, oh, I know exactly what I was talking about. So, like, I'll go back. So I'll just write, like, little words or phrases of a bit I'm thinking about in my head or on the street, or, like, I'll record it. And then when I sit down maybe once a week or in preparation of a gig, I'll sit and write. I'll write out the whole thing, right? I'll write out everything I want to say about it. And then when I'm like, ooh, this is too wordy, this is too long, a joke should be like, set up, punch, set up,
like
punch,
set right?
All about timing.
Right. So a trick that I'll share this trick, and can God forgive me, but I'm pretty sure you would teach this somewhere else. So a trick about it is like when you're writing your material, if you could highlight with 3 highlighters, right? The setup, the punchline. If there's too much space between those 3 sections, shorten it down. Like, be really economical with your words, right? And then if you see that one color is so big and the punchline is really small, like, you have to really look at that and see, like, how can I shorten that introduction? Or are you really lingering too long with that? And, like, if that punchline isn't, and then you test it, right? Then you test it out once you see that structure is there. So you could actually see on a piece of paper, and this is just one method to do it, how your colors, it should be equal. It should be equal colors around there, or just like intro, set up, punch, intro, set up, punch, intro, set up, punch, and then punch and punch, and then there's something like callbacks. Like, that callback is gonna go to that same thing. Maybe I could see in a diagram my set. And so I either memorize it or like get close to it, and then I'll ad lib on stage. I'll try it out. I'll see what works, and then I record that set, and then listen to the audience. Did it take too long? Was there too much breath?
So
was there too much
back
air?
To what you did?
Yeah, record everything.
How do you feel about listening back? I know when I listen to
I hate myself. I hate myself, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm not listening to me. I'm listening to the audience.
Right?
Just if they reacted the way you wanted.
But I've had tremendous growth in that, because like I could see when I'm on stage, when I'm like pacing back and forth, when I'm all over the place, where I can see where I'm nervous, when I'm not, how I come out the gate. You have to do it, because the more uncomfortable you are, the audience knows you're uncomfortable.
There's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that goes into it. Mi gente, if you artist or a musician or somebody to do something for free, now you understand why it is that we take offense to that.
And we're not here promoting ourselves because we love it. We actually, a lot of artists just have some like really intense insecurity about the work we do. It's about like, how does it make you feel? Do you like it? That's the thing. And so we welcome feedback. Criticism you can keep to your damn self.
Don't be putting it on
We're
YouTube.
already hard on ourselves.
And the reason I asked you the question of how you set up your shows was because I've heard it from multiple either comedians or actors that they're doing stand up and they set it up different. Everybody has told me a different
Everybody
way.
has a different
I know
method.
I talked to one guy and he mentioned that he sets up. So he's a musician as well, so he sets it up like a rhythm, right? So he has to have a da 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 da, and then punchline. It's like always a rhythm for him. Then I talked to someone else, and he was like, "Oh, I improv half of the time." Then I talked to someone else, and they're like, "Oh, I do not improv at all because I bombed a couple times when I tried to do that." Do you improv when you're up there?
Yes. Well.
Or ad lib.
Ad lib for sure. See, the thing is that I'm an actor. So the core and where I'm comfortable is having a script.
Okay.
but I have a very loose script. So like I know what my thought process was when I wrote that. So like I'll show you right now. This is an example. This is an example of a set, right? So look, this is a set. This maybe is a half hour of a set. Okay. So just 2 words: gained weight, coquito cuchi, armpit fat, fat diet, Zumba, yoga, sex education, abuela, Match.com, split check, asshole check-in, gas and sex, papi títere, Latin clubs, ghetto conversation, Puerto Rican neighbors, mom versus crazy. Those are just like titles of sections of things that I know, I memorize. Some comedians can do like 20 minutes of audience interaction. That is a completely different animal, and that is a very fine-tuned form. Kenny Ortega can do an entire 30 minutes of audience interaction, and there's a method behind it. Get one guy, know their name from Dick section, be like, well, you know, where you from, blah blah blah. Do a bit with that one person, and then when you go over here, he doesn't even have to speak. Be like, yeah, that's like you, cocotazo, like coco, you know, like there. It's just a very methodical way of doing things, and those are very fine-tuned crafts that are not out in like learn that or get mentored. But I, as an actor, I like a script, and I like doing this, and I like knowing, oh, I know that whole coquito cuchi thing, and I'll tweak it depending on the audience. So if there's a lot of black women in the audience, be like, man, you ever like have a drink, like you got this really good like rum drink, and then all of a sudden your pussy gains 10 pounds, and you know, it's just, I'll tweak it depending on who's in the room.
You got to know your audience.
You have to know your audience. Definitely. You have to vibe. And there are people that they like one-liners. You know, like they like what's it called? It's machine gun. It's machine gun.
Yeah,
just
so
like
a bunch of one-liners.
One-liners. There's a guy that I know that could do 30 minutes of just one-liners. That's 60 jokes. 60 jokes that you memorize, and they kill every single time because they're stupid. It's like they're so simple, it's stupid.
And you know what? I would be nervous if I was a comedian. I'll be nervous about, and I'm sure you probably had to deal with this before. I'll be nervous of saying the same joke. You know, let's say you're in Chicago and you're kind of doing the same kind of show. But then I'll be like, man, this person probably came to 2 of my shows or 3 of my shows. How do you deal with that?
Sometimes they're their favorite jokes. Okay. Sometimes like they know you're gonna throw it out. It gets nerve-wracking because if you do the same circuit, if you do the same audience, they are gonna hear your set a couple times. Yeah. 2 times is okay because they like that joke. They know you're funny. Yeah. They're kind of in on it too. Yeah, like, they're in on it too. But at the 4th time you do it and someone else is finishing your joke at the audience, you're like,
hell no. I will be so pissed. It's like, hey, you just took my.
So at that point, like even if you are doing the same, like I have maybe in my bank 2 hours of material, which is not much. Hours worth of material because you only get hired for maybe 10-15 minutes at a time, right? Pull from. So if I know I'm in a room and I could see people that I know maybe have seen my show before, yeah, I should pull something that I don't do often. But you switch it up, but that challenges you. You need to write. You need to write. You also need to be relevant. You need to be timely.
And,
you need like ask me if I've written any new Trump shit. A couple. Like I've just had 3 gigs since I've been back. I made my debut 2 weeks ago. Cool. Yeah, 2 weeks ago I made my first stand-up in a year and a half since my mom died. And guess what? Like I wrote a lot of grieving comedy. And it was like funerals are great because now you get to see what everything you have that abuela has guardada. Like that when a funeral happens, and he's like, yo tengo esto guardada hace tiempo. Like, so I'm writing some grieving comedy, and I think my mom would be very proud that I get to use all of that to let somebody else kind of like have a moment of like, yeah, that's hard. But these are the really beautiful moments about what happens with tragedy. And comedy plus time equals tragedy, and I've given it some time.
Exactly. So now, also, you know, you're an activist. You do stuff in the community. Will you consider yourself a community organizer? And I know a lot of people, whenever I say the word activist, a lot of people are like, well, no, not really. I don't do that. I'm more of a community organizer. So what kind of things are you doing in the community now?
I would say that I like to describe myself as an artivist because I use my art platform. But I don't do a lot of community organizing. I support community organizers, right? So there are there are levels. Like, a lot of people would say no to artivism or activism, but resistance in and of itself is a form of activism, but community organizing is part of that umbrella. There's advocating is part of that umbrella. There's people who do only direct action and demonstration. That's part of the umbrella. It's just to get to know a little bit more, and people who are just starting, and depending where they're at and how much they have learned or been mentored, they'll tell you whether or not they're an activist. I think it's a very personal thing of how outward you are with your politics, because it's a risk. Yeah. I believe that I do a lot through my art. Just by breathing is a resistance, right? Yeah. Just by living in the Chicago area is resistance. I do a lot of my political, passionate stuff through Facebook. I'll write commentary, but I'll still go do a play somewhere that is contra what I actually believe, but that paycheck is good, and I'm still an actor at the end of the day. So it's, dealing with the hypocrisy of the thing you have to do versus the thing you believe in.
Exactly. Yeah.
I believe that that's my struggle. I'd say that I am a huge supporter. So you will see me out in events that support incarcerated mothers, that support Black Lives Matter, that support divested schools and communities, that will support the freedom of Oscar Lopez Rivera. I am there in support of a lot of events that have been organized by other community members. Okay. But my politics are very intersectional, where I'm going to be performing at Dyke March because I believe in that. I'm going to be performing here because I believe in that. So I think as an artist, me showing up publicly and openly and supporting that in my personal platform, that's the particular brand of artivism that I do.
Awesome. Now, if our followers want to follow you in social media or anywhere online, how can they
fuck
find
off. I don't need more. I don't need stalkers.
That was quick. She said that real quick.
If you want to follow me, don't. I'm kidding. The thing is that I'm so attached to people. So if you follow me on my personal page, I will follow you right back, and I will look and be like, who baby this is? Like, why you getting married? Like, if you follow me, I will follow you right back. If you don't want me intruding on your life, don't follow me. Go follow the performer page. Don't go to my personal page, because my personal page, I will get lit. My performer page, I will post where I'm going to be at, the next few events, what am I doing, what things I care about, for sure. But my Twitter handle is Boom Boom DuPrey. And I just started learning how to Instagram.
A little late, but it's all right.
A little Instagram. You're going to see my dog Douglas on there all the time. But I am very, very active on Facebook. My personal page has a lot of what I believe to be sociopolitical information that I think affects Chicagoans. Yeah. But particularly what's going on in the theater community. I'm very active in the theater community in Chicago. I think that right now is a very hostile and exciting time to be a theater practitioner. Like, we are still experiencing racism and transphobia and a lot of white privilege in our reviews of white critics that come to see plays about Black bodies and Latino culture. So, like, we're pushing back. So, like, there's a lot going on. And, depending on what you're interested in, there's different medias and platforms to follow. But I really love the support. I appreciate everything that I've been given as far as being welcomed in various communities. So if you kind of like want bruja politics, want to learn how to be free and want to hear me talk about that, then yes, please follow me on Facebook.
Awesome. And do you have any shows coming up or anything that you want to plug that you're going to be performing at?
So currently at Free Street Theater, we are creating a play about miracles. It's called Los Milagros, and it's talking about how we recognize everyday miracles in our lives and how resilient we are as people. Okay. And it's focusing on the Latinx community specifically. So it's going to be touring around 5 parks across the city of Chicago. So please follow us on Free Street. So I'm producing that show, and we're also collecting stories. Like, we want to know, what's your miracle? Like, it was a miracle I didn't get booted today. Like, that is an everyday miracle. It's a miracle that I got my rent paid being an artist full time. That is a miracle. So we're collecting those stories. But currently, in the summertime, at the end of the summer in August, you can catch me in a show called Fly Honeys. It's by the Inconvenience Theater. It's a cabaret. So it's a political cabaret. So it's a body positive, sex positive showcase for artists to come in and do their interdisciplinary art form while shaking their ass and looking good and feeling fine. So like some sexy ass body, anybody, everybody. So that's something I'm really excited about, and I'm going to be doing some spiritual ritual on stage, talking about how we can connect back to our ancestral roots for healing, because healthcare ain't going to do shit for us, right? Like we have to figure out how to pray ourselves to well-being. And we're going to do that in a sexy way.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to say thank you for coming by today.
Thank you all for having me. It's so exciting.
You're going to be at the Pride Parade.
I'm going straight to the Pride Parade right now to walk with Vida Ciudad.
Check it out.
Can you
make
see
sure
me?
you share this video.
Yeah, you're on there. Yeah.
Okay.
Make sure you share this video, share the link. Melissa, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you
us
all.
today. I know it's a little early, but you got your coffee in, now some water.
Share the video later on your way to work tomorrow. Everybody's got to go to work, but I just want to remind everybody to be as loving and caring and compassionate out there as possible. Things are going to be hard. Things are going to get progressively harder, but we have to remember that there's joy and there's love and there's laughter that heals. So find an opportunity. One of these three things: joy, laughter, healing, because it's all about how we survive this time together, and why not do it in love and support of one another. So I'm just here spreading some love and laughter.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And mi gente,
Que
thank you
viva
for
Puerto
tuning in.
Rico libre.
Exactamente. Peace and God bless.